External, October 12th, 1985. Hey, welcome to Apollo City Comics. I'm Brandon.
Yes. I'm David. What's up?
And we're here to talk about Watch Quest, our hopefully three.
Yeah,
if this gets longer,
it's planned
than,
three.
It's
yeah,
planned three.
Who knows?
But it's a long book and it might be a long podcast. But our 3-part journey through Watchmen, what we've seen so far, what we've read so far, and what they've made so far. Today we're covering the graphic novel, the original, the core, the holy Bible of books.
Yeah.
The most acclaimed graphic novel ever. It's a good place to start.
I would say so.
It's an intense place to start. But
What's more acclaimed than Watchmen? As far as graphic novels.
I don't know.
Maybe
The Dark Knight Returns?
I was going to say maybe The Killing Joke. That's the only other thing I would go with.
But that's another Alan Moore story, which is funny.
That's true, huh?
I want to talk about
Alan Moore, wow.
Yeah, you know what? There's some Dark Knight stuff I want to get into here, too. We'll make that soon.
Okay.
You know what, David? What is your first experience with Watchmen?
Oh, it's my first experience. Okay. Watchmen, I saw the movie when I was in high school, and I hadn't read the book up till that point. So that was my first time experiencing the story, was the film version.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which is most people's gateway.
Probably.
You know? Yeah.
I would say so. Definitely got a lot of popularity picked up after that, for sure.
I think I was too young to realize how popular it may have been pre-movie.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, it came out in what, 86?
85?
85?
87?
Yeah. 1986. I got it up here in front of me. Yeah, I mean, we were just babies, and then...
I wasn't born.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wasn't born either. I don't know why I said babies. But even
there was Watchmen babies in The Simpsons.
Really?
I think it was The Simpsons. Yeah, there's a little picture. Yeah, The Simpsons. Look up that clip, everybody, on YouTube. Watchmen Simpsons. Or Alan Moore Simpsons.
How strange. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, I was just too young for it.
Yeah.
For most of it. You know what I mean? And then by the time I was mature enough, I heard about the story. I saw the movie. And then when I was in college, I was studying English for a little while, and Watchmen was actually one of the assigned readings.
Oh, that's great.
So
that is awesome.
I had to buy it for school,
that's
and
beautiful.
I bought mine at the UTEP bookstore. Like, it was in the that's where I'm just going through picking out all these like novels, and then here's Watchmen.
It gives me hope in life,
right? School teacher. The class was about like storytelling in other mediums, so it was
nice.
like okay, you're gonna pick a comic book. This is the comic book to pick.
Ultimate
for sure.
medium, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And we'll talk about the movie more, but some of the scenes like are very. It's all camera paced, you know. Alan Moore does a lot of that zoom out, like almost at the beginning of every issue. They start off with a zoom out.
It's a lot about giving you small details about characters or scenes. It's visual, but they also do it in the storytelling, where in the first issue they'll drop someone's name and then they won't explain everything that's going on until later. And one of the examples that comes to mind is like the Hooded Justice thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you hear about Hooded Justice and then you hear a little bit more and then a little bit more and then you find out like he's more than likely he was brutally murdered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess it's never definitively said, but...
And it's still a mystery, which means not definitively murdered.
That's
might
true.
pop in Doomsday Clock too.
Oh, I guess it's true.
Yeah.
And
never know.
I have no idea. I have zero knowledge about Doomsday Clock, so I'm excited to read that.
Which will be part 3 of this series.
Yeah.
So just as
let's break it down right now. This is a good time to break it down.
This first episode is going to be all about the graphic, the core book, where all this came from, the ultimate book. Next episode, we're going to talk about the movie. Probably the director's cut, assumably.
Yeah, I think so. Or at least a comparison of them.
Yeah.
The director's cut's not that much different.
Not much. It's like 20 minutes longer, I think. Yeah. Not 3, another hour like Batman vs. Superman. And then episode 3 is the sequels and prequels.
Yeah.
Before Watchmen, which was, I've heard not positive things about it.
You know, it's... Well, let's wait.
We'll find out. I haven't read it.
I've read most of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't read any of it.
There's a few that I haven't, so.
And then we're also going to talk about the current series, Doomsday Clock, that Jeff Johns is writing. And that's a sequel, and that's integrating Watchmen with the DC universe.
Interesting, okay.
Which is interesting, because this book is never mended with that universe, you know? Like,
although there is a mention of Superman in this book.
There is, and there's also
they mention him as like a fictional character, though.
Exactly, yeah. And there's some other notes. I have some notes on that. We'll run through it. this first, just opening up the book.
Perfect.
I mean, it's crazy. You get that zoom out. It starts off with the button covered in blood. And the description's talking about the gutters are filled with blood and everything. And it's literally what's going on. So it's just that great Alan Moore storytelling, And what's awesome is if we look at the fight scene that comes up right after this, I love how what the detectives are talking about are kind of opposite of what's going on in the scene.
Yeah, that's true. They really have no idea what's going on.
Page 2 of the issue, if you look at the fifth panel, where Blake is getting punched, it's this guy, Blake guy, the occupant. He had muscles like a weightlifter. He would have had to put he would have put up some kind of fight, I'm certain. And he's just getting beat to death right there. Yeah, which is awesome. And then I love on page 3, the very last panel, ground floor coming up as he gets tossed out the window. I mean, from whatever floor they're on.
And I love it's got all this backward storytelling where you're piecing together the story afterwards, and then when Rorschach comes in later and checks that thing out. The thing that sticks out to me in the beginning too is I love how they did this with Rorschach on the first page. He's just there immediately, and you're reading this monologue from him, and you see this guy in the background. You don't expect that's who's talking.
Yeah,
but
when I read it, I didn't think that was Rorschach.
Yeah, no one does.
I mean, this was one of the best, pretty much detective kind of storytelling.
Yeah,
I didn't expect the ending. I didn't expect the villain to be the villain. You know what I mean? I didn't expect the characters to be.
It's got great twists.
Yeah, the twist. I mean, the comedian being Silk Spectre's father.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That's true.
I mean, and I always thought it came from the rape.
Okay.
But I mean, it came years later.
It came years later,
which is crazy.
Which is why Silk Spectre's not upset.
Exactly.
With the thing, yeah. She already came to terms with it. And in a weird way, her character is written in a very flawed manner where I think, Alan Moore's trying to paint that as a negative. Mm-hmm. He's trying to paint her as a weak character, I think, for not disowning him, essentially. And instead, he, she goes back to him. She really likes him.
Yeah.
And it shows that she has a weakness for, that kind of abusive relationship.
Oh, yeah. I mean, her and John's a perfect reflection of that.
Well, exactly. And then it passes down through the family, right? Mm-hmm. So then her daughter also has a bunch of dysfunctional relationships, which might be a cool place to get into, I guess. The story is really about dysfunctional characters, and every character has a major character flaw, and it gets into the philosophy behind Watchmen, and that it's how are we supposed to trust the people who are going to protect us?
Exactly. Yeah. That's where the catchphrase comes from. Yeah. Who watches the Watchmen?
Who watches the Watchmen?
Which actually pops up for the first time on page 9.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on the garage door of the classic Night Owl. Well, which is awesome about this page too, is that it's the first appearance of Who Watches the Watchmen, and then the sign, instead of in front of his shop, it's obsolete models, a specialty. And he's one of the golden age kind of era heroes. He's obsolete,
Yeah, that's really cool.
So I thought that was cool. Moore has so many little connections to everything. Everything's connected so well.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the original script for Watchmen?
No, I haven't.
It's brutally long.
Really?
Yeah, Dave Gibbons, I was told that he used to highlight certain passages and just read those highlights instead of reading this huge... I mean, he'd have to read everything Moore sent him, but just only take out key parts because it was just so expansive and detailed.
Detailed, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, for the most part, I think Watchmen has really great pacing, too. I don't think that there's moments where...
The 9-panel pace, the grid that they use, perfect. It's awesome. And Tom King uses that a lot now in the current Batman run as well. And he only breaks that 9-panel grid for, key moments,
Yeah.
One being page 11 when we first see Night Owl's ship. It kind of has that little... It's still kind of a grid. You could look at it that way.
Yeah.
But it's broken,
Yeah.
Because those could be 2 separate panels.
That's true.
What's kind of cool about this scene as well is that you have this dark Rorschach character. From the start, we know he's kind of nitty and gritty. And then you have Night Owl, who has the gadgets, the car. Is this a Batman meets Batman kind of moment,
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that Night Owl is always kind of the Batman-style character. I don't know if Rorschach is. I guess Rorschach, I think, is like the embodiment of vigilantism, and in that there's a certain level of being unhinged that goes along with someone being a vigilante and like wanting to, they're solving violence through violence, I guess is what it's at. And Rorschach is an example of someone unhinged. I guess Batman's a little more controlled than Rorschach is.
Oh yeah,
Rorschach's a madman.
And I don't know if you ever noticed this. Kind of bouncing about more amongst the book. When you look at Rorschach's caption bubble, it's all rugged. It's all like kind of squiggly lines. Like you get that gritty voice right away from like that Rorschach, And when you look at the moments pre the child scene where he kills the dogs and finds the girl like that was burnt inside the stove thing, his caption bubbles are normal. It's not until after that incident does it get all squiggly and like rugged.
Oh, interesting.
That's
so like
when
in the
Rorschach
flashbacks,
broke. Yeah.
When Rorschach, and I guess that's interesting. I'd never noticed that before. That's a really good detail. Yeah, Rorschach it has been broken, and you can even tell in that early meeting when they first get together with Captain. What's his name? The leader, the one who was trying to get together the.
Oh yeah, the crime
busters.
Yeah,
Crime busters. What a terrible name. When they're at that meeting, Rorschach seems very like level-headed.
Yeah,
at that point in the story.
He seems like he'll fight and he has reason to fight, but he's not creepy and broken and violent. And I feel like he's Batman. He has the stopping point still. And this is after say Batman killed someone, and then he would just break.
This would be like the example.
And Alan Moore set out with this book to just destroy comic books. It's weird. Alan Moore doesn't like comics. He says.
He does, though. I don't know. I think Alan Moore is just a little too, what's the word? He's like too artsy-fartsy sometimes. He's like,
with reason. But I mean, still.
I'm above comic books. It's like, you're a comic book writer, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And he says that they're made for we're grown men watching other grown men in tights. It's like, dude, you created all these grown men in tights. Like,
that's true.
But I mean, it is all fan fiction. So he is the one like obsessing over these heroes in tights, writing fan fiction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a lot
true.
of it is because this was all again like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, like Lost Girls, like pretty much like the majority of Moore's writing. It's based off of something. It's all fan fiction at this point. And this was all off of the Charlton comic superheroes like Peacemaker and Blue Beetle and stuff like that. Have you heard of those before?
Yeah. I'm familiar with Blue Beetle, which is what Night Owl's supposed to be, right?
Yes. Yeah. And then, oh man, it's a mixture because I know Rorschach's supposed to be like the Question, but he has a lot of elements of Batman in him, as we've named. Peacemaker's the comedian. I mean, Dr. Manhattan's a lot like Spock from Star Trek, or who else? Captain Atom. Captain Atom is what he's really based off of.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
And he wanted to use these characters originally, but they said it was too dark to kind of do it.
Oh, to just like bring these characters in and kind
of transform them like that. Yeah,
the story's very sad.
It really is. But I mean, it's weird to think of them as like the Blue Beetle and the Question.
I guess it's true. What's funny is that you're comparing him more to other characters. When I was reading him, when I was reading through the story, I just kind of saw different people. Like different ideas embodied through a character, not just necessarily people, but maybe sometimes broad ideas. So like Rorschach is the vigilante, and he's like about taking justice into your own hands, and how can you regulate that really? Night Owl is like the hero who hides behind technology, and there's a ton of heroes like that.
Oh yeah.
Heroes that depend on whatever it is, and Night Owl's really a coward. Yeah, he's not a courageous person. So he uses all these things, and he's willing to take any excuse he gets, really. Silk Spectre, I don't know. I don't want to sound chauvinistic or anything, but it seems like hers is that she wants the attention of being a superhero, and that she's the one who got into it for maybe more of a fame kind of thing. I could be wrong, or maybe
her
reading
mom
into
is
this
like
too
that.
shallow. Her mom is like that
definitely
too.
like that. But I think her as a daughter, she's a girl that was controlled by her mom. And
just kind of has to figure it out on her own.
Yeah, she's just kind of lost, and she was set on a path, and she doesn't know anything else. She was grown around this. She grew up with these people as her like uncles. She calls the original Night Owl her uncle. And I mean, so she's weak in that sense.
Yeah, and she talks about how she's felt like she's wasted time
because this isn't the life she wanted.
Yeah,
you know, that's her main part. You know, I really thought at the beginning of this, especially the first 2 issues or so, it's like Batman rounding up the Justice League, trying to like warn them.
Yeah.
You know, like in a dystopian future where you know superheroes are outlawed, and you know he has to go around and be like something's coming, and everyone's just like, whatever, Bats, you know, you're crazy now. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I get from that.
I kind of feel the same thing. Although, and that's what you expect to happen the first time you read it, or if you've never experienced it. You're like, oh, the team's getting together. Okay, we're going to take... And then you're like, oh.
And you expect them to all be banded up together, fighting the forces of evil together.
No, they're a mess.
You know, actually, looking at this page over here in the diner, I want to say it's page 25. Still in issue 1. Some cool little things here. The page before, page 24, we have another Who Watches the Watchmen on the first panel. But on page 25, panel 4, there's a girl with the makeup of the Eye of Horus. And that's like another foreshadowing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of Egyptian like references and everything. And, you know, the Eye of Horus, it's like protection and royal power and... like good health, like of the elite, and they're all in this fancy diner, and that's where you see that character, you know. So it's a cool little. Alan Moore wrote that in and did some research. To
that was definitely intentional. That's cool, man. That's a really nice detail. And then the first issue ends with like the opposite, essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where we're now pulling further and further from the smiley face.
From how the first page was zooming. Yeah, exactly.
It's a great bookend.
Oh no, it's similar to the first page. It zooms out off of the smiley face. I get what you mean? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oof, that's awesome.
It's good stuff, man.
And then it ends with the Bob Dylan quote from Desolation Row.
Yeah, I think it is.
The My Chemical Romance did an awesome cover, or a very short cover of that song. Yeah, that song is like 10 minutes.
That is pretty good. Well, yeah, Bob Dylan's songs are really more stories, and he talks about it too. The Dave Gibbons. Mm-hmm. They talk about like the original. Oh, in the beginning, right? Yeah, and their little forward.
Yeah, it was that song that started it all.
That's right. Yeah, at midnight, all the agents and the superhuman crew come out and round up everyone who knows more than they do.
So cool. Yeah. It's so cool that Bob Dylan was singing about superheroes.
Yeah.
Whenever the song was made.
Well, and Bob Dylan's talking about the government. You know what I mean? Bob Dylan's talking about the reaches of the government and like whoever's really in power. And that's really what I think the comedian kind of symbolizes.
Oh yeah.
He's like the black hand of the government essentially. Mm-hmm. And which is cool. I don't want to get too much into it, but the movie adds a detail to the comedian that's not in the book.
What is that?
In the opening scene, which is also set to a Bob Dylan tune, the times are changing.
Yeah.
The comedian's shown assassinating JFK.
Yeah.
Which isn't in the book, right?
No,
Am I crazy?
No.
Yeah.
They write it like they say that in the book.
Do they really? Okay.
Yeah.
I must have missed that part. But you never get to see it like in the way that they showed it in the movie.
If they don't say it in the book, there's a panel where he says, "Well, don't ask me where I was the night JFK was assassinated."
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah. So yeah, for sure he does say that, but I don't know if they directly say it. Yeah,
and they definitely don't show it, which I thought was such a cool imagery in that.
And that was in that
movie.
And when we're going into the movie, that should wait till probably next week.
Yeah.
But there is a cool little moment in that same intro scene where there's one of the heroes is punching out a gunman. And then you see these rich mom and dad like in the background with a young kid, and that's supposed to be Bruce Wayne and his mom.
Funny.
Yeah, Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder really did great on Watchmen. I'm not gonna lie. There's so many cool references. Like,
yeah. I'll get into my full defense next episode.
Next episode for sure.
I'm gonna get turned.
But you know, under the hood, I really love how Alan Moore, like I talked about in the last podcast in Providence. You know, for those who thought that the extra 3 or 4 pages of dense, chapter reading at each issue is a lot, try reading Providence, dude, because that's like 10 pages of just note reading from a notebook. But anyways, this does mention that the Shadow and Doc Savage are or exist in this universe and as comic books, just as Superman exists and is a comic book. So I think there's no mention of any of the older Golden Age heroes. Mm-hmm. I think it's just them. But I mean, it's a very cool little thing. Like, this is supposed to be in our kind of universe, our real world universe, you know, and that's how separated he made Watchmen from Superman and Batman and, you know, stuff like that. Like, this is what if superheroes were in reality. And Alan Moore does this so much, especially in like Miracle Man. We'll do something on that too. Those who haven't heard of Miracle Man need to look that up. It's an outrageously amazing story. But it shows how like dark everything could get and how people really may act in times like this, you know? Like, this girl left the person she was with for, I mean, a number of years, and then they break up, and then she goes to like this other guy, kind of as like a rebound in a sense. The same little group of people are the ones that are causing chaos that were saving us before. I just think it's so crazy about how people change. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where else? I'm barely on issue 2 too.
Yeah, right. There's so much to go into here. Let me see. Let me flip on over to issue 2. Well, issue 2 we have the funeral for the comedian.
Oh yeah, there's that. I was gonna say the rape, but I guess the funeral is the first thing that we really do notice.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, like that's the shocking part of the scene or the issue for sure.
Well, Alan Moore puts rape into everything.
Yeah, and you know,
as a kid, I thought it was just like how outlandish. He puts rape in everything. Yeah. But then reading this in 2018, you're just like, all right, you know, don't even doubt.
Stories have gotten so out of hand. Well, I just think rape is like a cheap storytelling tactic. Like, we don't have to go there, everyone.
Often, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, from Alan Moore, it's like, come on, man, let's calm down.
It's like his signature now.
The part that's more disturbing to me in that scene is when he punches her and she's got all this like blood coming out of her mouth. Like, he really messes her up. Like, he's a super brutal guy. This is where we get the real identity of the comedian. Yeah, what he's become. This issue. Yeah. Well, you also get the scene in Vietnam as well, which this issue in particular. I mean, it does it to a much greater effect than the first one. I don't even know if the first one has any flashbacks. I'm sure it does. Oh, yeah, it does. But the thing about Watchmen is that the storytelling is disconnected. And a lot of times you get like this call and response kind of storytelling where you have the main storyline going on in whatever the present timeline is. But then you jump back and see another scene that directly relates to... And later we get into the Tales of the Black Freighter thing and everything, but... At this point, you get to see like every part of the comedian through all these different times. Oh yeah, and Vietnam for sure is a huge darkest dark chapter for him. Yeah,
I think right before on page 9 of this actually on the larger panel, this scene in particular, it shows Dr. Manhattan staring at the Silk Spectre when she's like 16. Yeah, and then. I think it's an issue 2 or 3 later, and they talk about when they first met, and it's that same moment from different like camera angles. So it's cool seeing this moment now, and then we're gonna see it more in depth later on. And
it's great. It's great body language in this little scene. You have Night Owl and Rorschach like 100% all in. Yeah. You have Ozymandias behind the group, watching and like overseeing the group. Which I think is a really cool like spot for him to be in. He's also in like a chair, like a thinking man's chair. He's sitting like a king or something. You know what I mean?
Like a ruler.
Like a ruler. Then you have the comedian totally like not into it at all. No, he's interrupting him with a burp. He's reading something else. But then you can look at his body language. You can tell immediately what's going on with Dr. Manhattan. And then that he's interested in Silk Spectre.
And you same way with her there. Head, and his lady's there too, yeah. And what's his name? Captain Metropolis.
Captain Metropolis.
How he looks like the older guy, kind of just like, hey guys, let's get together. Like,
he's like misshapen, you know what I mean? Even his pant legs are all. He looks just out of date. Silly. Yeah, out of date for sure. I can see that.
Page 10. Oh yeah, check it out here. Perfect example. Rorschach's caption, his bubble.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a really cool thing you pointed out that I never noticed. Yeah, he's just talking like everyone else. And there's even a little line in here that he says, obviously I agree, but a group this size seems more like a publicity exercise somehow. It's too big and unwieldy. He's talking so articulate.
Yeah, and it's so broken later.
Yeah, like, so broken, and he becomes journal, savage. Like,
the first part of his journal, there's no commas. It's just the way he talks. Like, there's no periods, there's no sentences. It's just... Page 12 right here. I really loved the biblical part that goes in as we zoom in on John. Thou most worthy judge eternal, suffer us not at our last hour for any pains of death to fall from thee. And then we switch over to the Vietnam scene.
Yeah, and this prayer returns too.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
constantly getting this. The entire funeral service is going on, and you have John like reflecting on these different spots. Yeah, so the Vietnam scene to me is where our timeline differs. Up until this point, I'd like to think that Watchmen is in the same universe. Mm-hmm. But when Dr. Manhattan gets transformed in that machine, in that accident, he wins Vietnam. And there's a great line that the comedian has that says, like, if we didn't win this war, that we would have lost our mind, or we've gotten crazy.
Panel 2 of page 13.
What is it? What is the quote again?
I mean, if we lost this war, I don't know. I think it might have driven us crazy, as a country.
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa.
That's true. And,
whoa.
And then after this, you have like other events happening. Like Dr. Manhattan becomes the instrument of the U.S. defense system. You have this alternate universe of Nixon where he's just been president for years.
Yeah.
And he's insane. Just in office.
Changing the Constitution to let him run for a third term.
Exactly.
Page 18, we have another Who Watches the Watchmen on that as well. I want a little clicker for every time we see that.
None of this has been mentioned yet either by the characters. It's not until a little bit later that after I think the alley fighting scene and either next issue or the issue after that Night Owl finally points it out and he's like, yeah, who's painting this thing? Or no, I'm sorry. You know what? I think it's actually the same issue.
Yeah,
it's right after this little riot scene.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is. And he's pointing out that he's seen this. But this is when he brings it up, because what are they doing in this riot scene? All they're doing is they're stopping protesters from the police protest, and that they're upset that they have these heroes instead.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they're concerned about, like, their safety, because if there are superheroes here and we have police officers, they're like, well, who's in charge of these guys? Well, that's them. Like, the whole vigilante routine that's gone on in comics forever.
Which, I think there's a lot of comparisons you can make to Civil War, the Marvel comic event, to the Keene Act in this thing.
Yeah.
Where the Keene Act is the government requiring, and I think it was that all the superheroes had to show their true identity to someone else, to at least one person on this council or something like that. Or no, I'm sorry, that's not the Keene Act. The Keene Act is when they straight up banned the superheroes, right? In the story of Watchmen.
Is it banned, or is it where they just have to like sign up with the government?
Well, I know that they say that's when Hooded Justice disappeared, is when the government was making them sign up. So that's before the Keene Act. Oh. That's back in the original Minutemen days.
I see. Yeah, and then the second one where they completely outlawed them.
Yeah, Keene Act, they just, they're saying that these things are outlawed.
It's a lot like The New Frontier by Darwin Cook, because it starts off with them passing a law, and that's why all the Golden Age heroes stop.
Okay.
And then Batman and all of them come a few years later and start switching stuff up, and the new Black Canary and stuff like that. It's very similar to Watchmen. I never realized that.
So is the Citizens concerned at all, though, in that storyline? Because I feel like it's also not the Citizens concerned necessarily in Civil War. Like, isn't it the government? And the government's like worried about collateral damage, and in Civil War they kill that whole group. What is it?
Well, that school.
The school blows up. Yeah, all those kids die.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it is a public concern. But in this one, we have like literal protests against the superheroes.
Mm-hmm. And they're shouting at him and throwing stuff at him, and that's why the comedian jumps out and starts shooting rubber bullets.
Shooting people, and tossing tear gas and stuff. So what are they doing? They're not doing anything. And Night Owl realizes that in this little scene.
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
Yeah. What are we doing at this point? This issue also ends on an Elvis Costello quote from the song The Comedian.
Oh, cool. That's the name.
And actually, this next chapter, Under the Hood, talks about the fate of the Minutemen. Let me see. Sally Jupiter had her kid in 1947, which was married, years after her getting raped. Which that's where we know that, hey, we think it's with her agent. Yeah. And then we even says that it's not the agent's kid, so we're kind of like left wondering. Dollar Bill shot dead because his cape got caught in
And I think I don't know if that's purposeful, but it seems like it's a funny little commentary on that, like, if you were a superhero, why would you have a cape?
Because
it would just get in the way.
Where the Incredibles got it from, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, that's so funny, yeah.
And then Mothman ends up in an insane asylum.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And
he comes back in Doomsday Clock.
Really?
Yeah.
That's exciting.
As a pretty primary character almost.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes me more excited.
Yeah.
I was about to say, they don't really ever tell you what happens with Mothman other than that, right?
No. And I think that's why Doomsday Clock, they just picked it back up.
That's smart. They find the one detail that wasn't fleshed out and they decide to go into it.
And then issue 3 starting up here. We have the Promethean Cab Company. I just thought that was cool that Moore named it the Promethean Cab Company. Tales of the Black Freighter starts up.
What do you think about Tales of the Black Freighter?
You know, I have really mixed feelings about it.
Yeah.
When I first read the comic, it was really grasping because I was curious.
Okay.
And I wanted to know more about it. But, you know, Moore does do a lot of overloading. Mm-hmm. And I feel like in some moments of the book, it's just overload at a certain point.
Especially towards the end of the story, I start getting frustrated.
Like I'm like
I don't want to read this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, and it's too much, and it's amazing how he intertwined multiple ways of storytelling here. We have the main story, then we have this opposite story that. Well, I mean, and this opposite story supposedly existed like in the EC comic days.
Okay.
And it even mentions like Julie Swartz, who was one of the main guys in DC back in the day.
Okay.
And the missing writer and all that as well. That's where that storyline starts. There's so many mini stories and side missions kind of in this book. But intertwining the Watchmen storyline with Tales of the Black Freighter and the book and all the reports and everything, it's magnificent.
Yeah.
You know, that takes work and effort and a lot of like just... I mean, Moore pours everything out into his work, you know, and you could tell he worked hard to fucking get this right.
Get it all ironed out. Well, to be honest, I'm not a fan of Tales of the Black Freighter.
Yeah.
I think it's ambitious, but I think it just kind of
I love it in the beginning.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I think it just starts to get overdone, and then it overloads the story. Like it completely. We just have pages of the Black Freighter, and it's like and
it becomes more and more. At the beginning, it's like one little panel, but later on in the book, it's like a whole page of Black Freighter, and then back to the storyline.
And you're just like kind of thrown about, and it's a little distracting.
I think it is.
Point, you know?
I don't know. I just want to get your take on it. I think the art style is really cool.
It is. I love how they make it look like an old EC book. You know,
exactly.
And I'm down for that, but. I mean, the imagery and the vocabulary of it, or it's how they compare war of... I mean, it's cool there. How they compare the war of, like, the nuclear war that's about to go down and the war that the pirate guy's in, you know? And trying to survive and him being the lone survivor and trying to do something to save his people, but then it actually hurts them more. Just like with... what's his face? Ozymandias. I always mess up his name. Oh. We both say totally differently.
Well, that's so funny. Too. We were talking about how do you pronounce Ozymandias, and they actually, I was looking it up. They settle it in Before Watchmen.
Oh, really?
Ozymandias issue 3.
Oh.
Where someone straight up asks him, okay, so then is it pronounced Ozymandias or Ozymandias or Ozymandias?
I thought it was Mandias.
And he says... Well, I guess it's D-I is bold. I think it'd be Dias, but I could be wrong. Dias. He says, in point of fact, both are acceptable, though I've always preferred Ozymandias. It sounds more elegant somehow.
Oh, I can see that. I can see more being all proppy and kind of prissy about that.
Ozymandias. Yeah. Like, it just seems like the right name for that character. But anyway, sorry, where were we going with Ozymandias?
Where was I going with that?
That we
I don't even remember where I was at, honestly. Well, page 4 of issue, what issue are we on? 3? Mm-hmm. We have that first little sex scene with Dr. Manhattan.
You were just so excited to get into that, weren't you?
Yeah, like it's crazy. Dude, this guy has 2 bodies, and then he's working on stuff. Like, what a dude thing to do. Be like, let's get it on, but I got to work on this stuff over here on the side as well. Like,
well, this is where she breaks up with him, right?
Yeah.
This is where she leaves him, and for good reason. It shows that he's spending time with her because he knows he has to.
Yeah.
Not because, and Dr. Manhattan is slowly losing touch with humanity, which makes sense because he has so much power He's literally on a whole nother level than everyone else.
And we'll get into that a little bit too, because I have some comments on that. The next page, it's all about John's exes. Page 6.
Yeah, and you're getting that back and forth, that call and response storytelling,
which is awesome. He does it
good.
so well, so well. And another thing to notice, these Nostalgia by Vedit billboards, they're all a little bit different. And look, it says Treasure Island under that. And it's just like a nostalgic thing, Treasure Island. Like he ties in certain things like that. I think there's one or two more that pop up later on in the book.
Interesting. Okay, I'll have to keep an eye out for it.
And there's another cool little reference that puts it in our world on page 11. This Island Earth. There's a poster of it. Page 11, panel 2. Yeah, with the Metaluna monster.
Wow, that is cool.
And this is where that awesome fight scene happens. I love how he just comes into. I mean, we have that back and forth storytelling as he gets ready and everything as well.
Yeah.
We break panels again, that 9-panel grid on page 11 as well for key moments. And we have this awesome fight scene, which honestly, in the movie's great.
Yeah, it is really good.
I love it in the movie. I think it's way better in the movie, honestly. But I think later on we have the fight scene. He freaks out. In the movie, he just disappears. Do all the people disappear as well?
I think they do.
Do they?
I feel like. Well, I haven't rewatched it yet, so we'll know for sure right now. But you also see there's a couple things that you get from the story. Right afterwards, we have Nova Express, who has this paper that they just handed out. This sort of what's the word? Tabloid. And you know that this has already been printed and written up before, and that this was all part of their plan.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It gives you the whole thing of this is all. It wasn't like just some reporter who got there and was asking questions. And then obviously it's part of Ozymandias' plan to get rid of him.
Because he supplied all the information. Yeah.
And we find out that Dr. Manhattan leaves. He stops by Arizona to get a picture of him and his first love, and then he's off to Mars, like, by himself. And we immediately see the newspaper headline that says Russians invade Afghanistan. So the pull of the the power left, and then there was a power vacuum that went to fill it, and the Russians were like, "Here we are, we're invading Afghanistan."
Let me see real fast. There was something I noted over here. I think it's an under the hood over here. Let me see. There's a date that's referenced here on the second page. It says that Dr. Manhattan came in March of 1960. Okay. Dr. Manhattan was based on the Atom from DC Comics. The Atom appeared for the first time in March of 1960.
Huh.
Yeah.
That is cool.
How cool.
That works out really well.
Let me see. Oh, and the next issue, issue 4. This is where we really understand Dr. Manhattan and John. And you really realize that this guy has so much power that he's everywhere at once. Imagine being a human being and realizing that you could see everything at once. Yeah. That's why he's so weirded out. That's why he's so awkward and why it doesn't seem like he cares, is because he's overloaded, I feel. Yeah. Well, he can't understand human conflict anymore because he's so beyond it. Well, maybe not even beyond it. It's more of like, I see how everything's laid out. Yeah. Why would I pour emotion into this if no matter what, this is what's going to happen? He doesn't see necessity for emotions. He's like, oh, that's... Because consequences or not, it's going to happen. Like, everything's already laid out. Just like this comic. And it's crazy thinking about it like that, too. Yeah. Dr. Manhattan reads reality like in a comic book that's spread in front of him. Okay, he's seeing every single moment at once. Yeah. Yeah. That's Nothing true. Ever changes, no matter what. It's going to happen, And it's because it's already all laid out, because it's like a finished book in that sense. And him being a human being and still absorbing this ability, being like, I can see the future, I can see the past, and I'm right here. And it's already happened, and I've experienced it because I'm now in the future, and I haven't experienced it yet because I'm in the past. He's just like, what does anything matter? What would anything matter at that point? You know, like, why invest in anything when it's already all laid out?
And they get into it more later in the book, but he's talking about all of time being at once.
Yeah.
Yeah, that every moment's just, I guess, an eternity. It's a weird way to think about time.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
really
and
strange.
it's what I kind of love about the character too, and why I feel sympathetic towards some of his views, and I don't feel like it's as harsh anymore as when I first read it, because it's like, that's just so much power for one human being to all of a sudden get.
Well, I don't see him as human anymore, really.
That's the next thing.
Yeah.
Is he human, or is it like, I mean, Alan Moore did a very similar thing with Swamp Thing. I guess it's an easier way to explain it too, is that when Alec Holland fell into the swamp and was transformed into this creature, the Swamp Thing, it's no longer Alec Holland. It's now this new form and this new figure who's trying to hold on to the concept of Alec Holland, because that's what went in, you know? But what came out is now something new. And he just wants to hold on to his humanity so bad that that's why he still considers himself Alec Holland in a sense. But he's now just a shell, like, of this entity.
Well, for John, like, immediately he still is very human. And you get it more in the next issue when you get, like, into the creation of him.
Oh, yeah.
But he becomes more cold and calculating. So it is very similar to Swamp Thing.
And it's him, like, discovering his powers at that point, you know? And once he really sees the plan, the layout, then he's just like, well, that's it. He solved it, you know? Like, what more does he have to push for, you know? Like, imagine reaching the end of something.
Yeah.
Of, like, your greatest you know.
And you know what? The comedian realizes this, too, when he shoots that pregnant Vietnamese woman.
Oh, God.
And he criticizes, because John tells him that he shouldn't do that, and he says, well, hey, you could have done anything you wanted to prevent this thing. But to me, I see it's kind of similarly to, like, as a human being, you would never unintentionally kill a small animal. You would see that would be like an insane person, like a psychopath. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if there's like a line of ants walking down the sidewalk, you probably don't even look.
Yeah.
And if you squish an ant, who cares?
Yeah.
This is one ant in this giant cog of wheels. You know what I mean? And at that point, that's what it was like for John. He was like, what's this one other person? We're in war right now. We're killing all these people. What's one person who's just so insignificant in this world and in this universe? He's like, yeah.
And it's funny because that comes back to the same aspect of, you know, if there's so many people, why do they matter? But then when Silk Spectre's, when they're on Mars, when she's on Mars with him, he has that moment. What does he call it? It's wait, let me pull it up right here. Where is that Mars moment?
There's gonna be so much page flipping sound in this thing.
The thermodynamic miracle.
Oh, okay.
Because of a family line of two people meeting and creating, two people meeting and creating, two people meeting and creating, and then one person that hated one other person more than anyone else, and creating her, Lori.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's a thermodynamic miracle, and he appreciates her. Like, he doesn't think her life is meaningless. I think that's what they say in the book.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, he even says it. It's that, you know, you see the world and it becomes all overcrowded because there's so much, and it's hard to appreciate that one thing. So we go from that big ant spectrum to really realizing that every single life is precious.
And that's John's arc over the book, I think. Because maybe at the beginning we see him at his most disconnected.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think the wake-up call of all these people who are dying because of him, even though I guess it's not entirely, like, truthful, like that accusation, I guess. Well, it's painted in a way that's supposed to make him react that way, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, it was obviously planned to get him to leave.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I think it changes his perspective in the story. Although, is all life precious at the end? Well, I guess it is, because I mean, well, I guess we don't have to go all the way in order, right? If you've been listening to this and you haven't read Watchmen yet, I don't know what else to tell you. But at the end, when he kills Rorschach, he doesn't save his life, but he knows that he has to kill Rorschach, or all of this other death would have been for nothing, essentially.
Because Rorschach would have stopped it.
Yeah. Well, Rorschach would have told everyone the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
And then anything that would have been gained, even though now they're in such a negative situation, to give that up, to make all this meaningless, he's not willing to do that.
One of my favorite Rorschach scenes is very different in the movie than it is in the comic.
Oh, okay. What scene?
It's the prison escape scene. There's actually two scenes in that.
Oh, okay.
The first one is that in the movie they saw off the guy's hands when Rorschach is still in the cell.
That's right.
And here they just slit his throat or something. And then there's that toilet scene with the midget. How in the movie, and I thought this was in the comic.
Little person.
Yeah, little person. I thought this was in the comic, where the door swings and you see him standing there, and it swings forward again, and then he's terrified, and then it swings again, and then he's choking him or something. Yeah, and that's in the comic. It just shows Rorschach walk in and then walk out, and then you just see the blood on the floor.
So Zack Snyder is
kind of one up more. Yeah,
he's one upping more in his own game.
And I thought that was a great moment.
How do you feel about that? Huh? The prison escape scene's great. What an exciting part. And I have this part open. They stab him or something. They disembowel him. They don't chop his hands off. That part's very brutal. Yeah. Very brutal in that storyline.
And the Vedit poster comes back again. For any of those who have the probably any copy we just agreed on of Watchmen, page 83, the first poster says, "Where's the essence that was so divine?" And then on page 271, the next one says, "Oh, how the ghost of you clings." That has a lot of meaning behind, backwards meaning towards the book, because how the ghost of you clings. That's after the heroes have kind of come back. That's when Laurie's come back and Night Owl. The ghost of them clings on. Where's the essence that was so divine? The superheroics. Where was back in the day? It was kind of has that exact divine sense. They were all chipper and it wasn't that bad, and now it's brutal and it's dark and it's bleak and this book. Great point. Now that we've gone this far into the book, we're pretty much we're almost at issue 9.
We're just kind of hopping around.
This started off as kind of like a crime drama, and we end up at nuclear war.
Yeah, that's true. At the beginning, it's just who's the murderer? Is he killing superheroes? Piecing it together, just like any
like a detective story, and then it
becomes into a
global
espionage kind of thing. I don't know what's the best way to describe it.
Dark Knight Returns has a very similar story arc. It starts off as kind of like a street gang sort of fight with the mutants, and then you have nuclear warfare towards the end with Superman and fighting a god.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well. Hot take over here from Brandon. I haven't seen that movie. When you said that right now, I thought you meant the Dark Knight.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the Frank Miller story.
Okay. Batman v Superman. All right, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the movie, or are you talking about the book Dark Knight?
The book Dark Knight.
Okay, when you said the Dark Knight, I went straight to, and then I was like, I guess it is a street gang at the beginning, and then I was like, Heath Ledger doesn't have nuclear bombs. Although I guess he is threatening to blow up the city. So I guess
the Dark Knight Returns.
Both works.
What's the third one? Dark Knight Rises. Oh,
Dark
Rises.
Knight Rises.
That's right.
Yeah. Confusing names.
I'm not a fan of the Nolan. That's a different.
Whoa!
Yeah.
What?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, different podcast.
Disagreement coming up soon.
we'll see.
Well, okay, now let's not get too into it. We'll talk about Batman for an hour.
But this book is violent. It's very gruesome for its time. It's kind of the book that changed comics forever. Everything, instead of killing comics, Alan Moore just made comics bleaker.
I can see that. He made it acceptable for things to be. But
he changed the game, and then nobody's changed it back. You know what I mean? Everybody wants that deep, dramatic fight, that big consequence, the heroes against each other type of thing. That's been the same formula since this book came out too.
Well, it's the best. That's how you get good conflict.
Yeah.
Especially now. You can only have, someone beat up the hooded bad guy for so many issues until eventually you're like, well, what if they fight each other? Everyone knows these characters. That's when you really feel it. You know what I mean?
I mean, for a first comic book, it sets the bar so high. It really does.
Well, here's my perspective on this thing, because to be honest, I'm not like a huge traditional comic book fan, and by traditional I mean books involving superheroes.
Yeah.
So reading Watchmen, to me, I almost wouldn't count it as like a traditional comic book, because it's such a self-contained story. Well, most of Alan Moore's stuff is.
Yeah.
Like you just read, the book V for Vendetta, for instance.
Oh yeah.
Another one where you just read it and that's it.
Promethea, Tom Strong.
Yeah. This thing feels like its own story. You read the whole thing and you're done with it. And it's not a superhero story at all.
No.
So if you haven't read Watchmen and you've listened to us spoil the whole thing, don't go into it expecting to leave with a happy feeling.
Yeah.
It's
dark from the beginning to the end.
Sad, bleak movie.
It is.
Movie. Well, it is a movie too, but it's a sad, bleak read. And it's more about, it's a criticism of government. That's what I would say it is.
Oh yeah.
First and foremost.
Yeah. That's what Moore's main focuses are on.
Yeah, it's definitely what it is.
What's your favorite Watchmen moment?
It's my favorite Watchmen moment. Oh, that's a tough question. Let me thumb through here as I think. My favorite Watchmen moment. I'm trying to think about maybe like what stuck out to me most as a kid. And for me,
when did you first read Watchmen? What'd you say?
Well, I say kid, but I must have been 19.
Dang, I was so much younger than you.
How old is a kid? I don't know. The thing that got me though, I think, was Rorschach's, I guess, origin story, when you kind of learn about him being a child and
his mom being a prostitute.
Yeah,
and all
that he's been like set up for, all of his issues. He was kind of forced into him.
I like how that comes back later when his landlady spoke on the news saying that he had sexual like allegations against her and all that.
Yeah.
And then he sees he's calling her a whore, and then he looks down and sees her son, and then he stops.
Yeah.
He, instead of doing something to her, he would have, being with Night Owl kind of brought some humanity back to himself, and he saw that kid and it was like a reflection of himself. So I think my favorite moment, and it came when the first time I read Watchmen when I was in 8th grade.
What? Really? Wow,
I didn't know what I got.
That's super inappropriate. And you didn't show your parents either. You were just like,
no, my dad got it for me. He didn't know anything about it. Yeah.
Oh, you didn't know either. Okay,
yeah, it was just one of those must read graphic novel things, and so my dad picked it up for me, and we had to take what's called the tax test, and
state standardized test in Texas.
Yeah, and it's 3 days of testing, and it only takes 2 hours, an hour and a half to take that test, and you just sit there for 6 hours. They just bring you snacks and you just read or something.
Yeah.
And so I brought a book to read, and I brought Watchmen.
Wow.
And
you're just in your chair silently freaking out
the whole time, just like, how does this? It didn't make sense. A lot of it didn't make sense to me as a kid, being that young. It's so much.
I was telling you this right before we started, or maybe we did start. Am I repeating myself? I don't remember. I picked up so much more this time through.
Oh yeah, me
as
too.
An adult who's like,
it's been years since I've read it as well.
Yeah,
so it's very refreshing.
So much about politics that I have more insight to now. Like I'm not,
the structure, the storytelling elements.
Exactly.
The moment that captivated me though when I was a kid, that just blew my mind, and I remember sitting there in my chair and looking around me, just like, what just just happened, is when you hit issue 12. I guess it is issue 12, the last issue.
Yeah, last issue. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Who expected that alien?
No one expected.
Who expected
alien.
all that death and destruction? Who expected that ending? And that's what's so great about this book, is that you don't expect anything. You really can't predict a lot.
Yeah.
Because you look at the age difference between Laurie and the rape, and then you're just like, no way could that be from the comedian, And then you find out later on, oh, they did hook up. And you find out Rorschach's identity, and you're just like, oh man. And then you find out about what
Ozymandias being the bad
was
guy.
Up to. Yeah, him being the bad guy.
Him orchestrating the entire thing.
Yes, yeah. And you think you kind of have it figured like you would a Batman comic, but you don't.
You really don't.
And that's what makes this book so great, is that every issue just slams you with information that you were just like, that's mind-blowing. Dr. Manhattan learning how to operate clocks, and that kind of reflects to his current thinking of the world and the universe, how it's all one ticking thing, you know,
one
like,
moving unit,
yeah,
but
one
made
moving
of
unit,
all
yeah.
essential little parts.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's crazy how good this is. And then the structure of the storytelling, that 9-panel grid, so awesome and classic, and he only breaks it in those key moments, and those moments stick out more than anything else, you know, and it's such fluid. He says it's not made for movies, but I could see where Zack Snyder made it into a movie.
Yeah, not to get like too much into my argument next week, or not argument, but points, I guess, but Watchmen, in my opinion, is the best adaptation of a comic book.
Yeah.
Ever. Like if you're considering like taking something and adapting it as close to the original as possible.
Yeah. To the T.
It's almost perfect.
Yeah.
Which really
with some added elements that make it even better in a sense.
It bugs me when people complain about the movie, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more. I have a lot to talk about that.
Yeah,
but
that's going to be exciting.
The ending, but we'll talk about it next time.
Is there... well, now that we're on the ending, though, that's another part that really got me. It was when Rorschach gets killed. I just wasn't expecting
yeah,
that.
you wouldn't expect... Especially because John and him, like, knew each other, you know? Like...
But you know that Rorschach wants to do it. He's not going to compromise his values.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Rorschach such a strong and amazing character, is that he's just like, dude, this is me, and this is, you know what I'm going to do. So if you're going to stop me, you're going to stop me right now.
And he's got the strongest will out of all the characters.
And he's in, like, Antarctica.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to reveal all this.
Right.
I'm going to find a way out of here.
I don't know
and
how I'm going to get
like,
back home. I don't know how this is going to, but I will do it.
Yeah,
like,
and it'll happen. And
you're
he's
like,
just
oh, gosh, okay.
I don't doubt it. Like...
That's crazy.
But I mean, it's hard to say that I would give this to somebody as their first comic or even superhero book to read.
Okay, like if I was picking the perfect person to recommend Watchmen to, it would be someone who has a pretty good knowledge of how the world works. Someone like in their late teens, maybe early 20s. And I would recommend this as like an entry point to comic books.
Yeah.
As someone who doesn't like comic books, like if the person just was flat out like, I don't like comics at all.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be like, you know what? Read Watchmen then. Because if nothing else, you're going to enjoy it. It's too good. It's too good. And I use this example all the time, but people talk a lot of trash about two things in particular to me: country music and anime. I hear this all the time. I don't like anime at all. All anime is stupid. Or I'll listen to anything but country music. I just can't take it. And is there a bunch of trash anime and country music? Obviously.
Oh, yeah.
So much.
Yeah,
piles of trash.
But there's also a lot of trash of everything else.
Exactly. And there are some gems in every genre of something. Watchmen's undeniable.
Oh, in a superhero sense, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I
think that's funny because we have such different contrasts. Like for me, like I understand superheroes probably a lot more than you do because that's my main focus. For someone that's not into superheroes, but you want to be like, you want to get into superheroes, read this.
Yeah.
Then I could see how it's a perfect book.
Well, all you need to know is the trope of the hero. You know what I mean? That basically all superheroes operate outside a system of government or some sort of system of like rules. They're self-serving and they make the decisions for themselves, but we trust them to make the decisions for us. And all of these stories, they're painted as like, you know, Superman never accidentally throws a train off a cliff or something. Superman like knows what he's doing, at least for a long time up until Watchmen came out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then this book opened up the potential for all these darker stories, but people, if you just know the concept of a superhero, I think you can get Watchmen.
Oh yeah.
The harder part to me is just like the symbolism behind the characters and behind like government. That part's way more.
It's something that you have to probably read multiple times, and I think it's because I've read the book 3 or 4 times in my life that I'm catching everything now. You know, I think when you first read it, you'll probably just capture the story and some of the elements, but going back and looking at it, there's so much behind every single thing. Like we could probably do an episode per issue. That's how like dense this book really is.
Yeah, you really could. We could pick apart every single little panel. And
it's also cinematic.
It'd be perfect.
You know, the way the way Dave Gibbons' artwork, and we have to give a lot of credit to Gibbons because he did create the characters, he did pin them, and he did make the first, you know,
like you always got to give credit to the artist because that's what we attach ourselves to. When we think of a comic book character, we think of the visual aspect of him. So.
And his cinematic movements and the way he places everything, it's couldn't be more perfect.
Yeah. What I really like about Gibbons' work in this book is his effective use of lighting and how he can convey like lighting in a scene, which I think some people might have a more difficult time. The one that really comes up to me is when Rorschach goes back to see Moloch, and he's telling him the story of like the comedian breaking into his room. Mm-hmm. And you don't know this. You can just infer it because of the lighting, but there's like a train or something outside.
Really?
And the light keeps shining in the room, and you see it over and over again. Let me find this real quick.
And you know what's crazy is that they didn't. This is one of the first comics they didn't use their primary colors. A lot of purples, a lot of oranges, a lot of
pinks.
Yeah, weird yellows.
And some strange greens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be tooting my own horn, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of the David and Frank and Beans color palette. When I was like looking at it today, I was like, wow, we have very similar colors to Watchmen. And we're also Watchmen influenced. Okay, I'm really close. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm just scrambling to find this scene.
I found the Vietnam scene faster than I found the. I know exactly.
I know. Yeah, I know the scene I'm talking about.
It's during the.
It's an early issue.
Oh, it's the first time Rorschach meets Moloch.
Yeah, and he goes to talk to Moloch because he knows the comedian's been killed, and Rorschach is.
And he's just like, "Why were you at the funeral?"
Why were you at the funeral? Because Rorschach was there too. He was standing outside the gate, right?
Yeah.
In his Rorschach getup. Oh, here we go. It's page 64 of the trade paperback, and I guess it's page 22 of issue 2.
There we go. Oh, yeah.
But you have the room cast in darkness, and then you see the light panel coming in, and it lights up the comedian and changes the shadows of the room. And you can tell that it's just that it's some kind of train or something. Yeah. Something's passing by the window in a rhythm. And then, down at the middle panel, bottom row 65, it's almost like a jump scare or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like the light's off, and then the light comes back on, and he's like right in his face, and he's got the tears in his eyes. His face is all scarred up from.
It's crazy how deep that scar is from the Vietnam.
From the Vietnam. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not excusing what he did. But no, you can understand why he was so upset, I guess, because she cut him good.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he had never been damaged or injured like that before.
I think when I saw the movie, I was like, it doesn't look that bad. But then rereading the comic, I didn't realize how deep that really went.
Yeah.
And I mean, this gives you a whole different thought. Like, what if we had literally God here on our planet in America?
Well, I feel like it would be this. So in this storyline, God is an American. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, God was a U.S. citizen.
Yeah. They
created him. The government got him while he was still, still sensible, still like us,
mm-hmm.
still thinking like us.
Mm-hmm.
And they got him to join in this allegiance. And then I think there's also a little bit of symbolism about the Christian America fighting against the Russians and this fear and spread of communism. There's a little bit of weird Cold War commentary going on in here too. It's a whole bunch of that. But we just abused it, I guess.
Do you think what
Ozymandias.
Ozymandias. Yeah. Do you think Ozymandias was right?
Oh, that and
what his actions were like. Do you think that would solve the world's problems? An event so horrific that it brings all the countries together.
Interesting. Well, I'm gonna get super political for just a second, but it won't be a left and right thing. I want everyone, if you're old enough, to go back to 9/11, 2001. And there was a brief window after 9/11 where everyone in the United States was 100% on the same team.
Yeah.
There was no political lines. People were just friendlier to each other. Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine what it would have been like living in New York. And just the gratitude to the first responders and the united, bam, we are one. We're the United States. Yeah. We're going to get through this thing together. We're there. But then what happened? Look at us now.
Yeah.
Yeah, look where we're at now. We couldn't be further apart. Maybe ever, as a country. And no matter what side you're on, I'm not going to get into that debate right now, but it's
on
hard
election night.
On election night, right? Yeah, we're filming this on election night. It's hard to deny that we're very polarized, and you can blame whoever you want for that, but So no, I don't think Ozymandias is right. He says he's the world's smartest guy or whatever.
But he didn't see this coming.
And yeah, but, well, it's hard to say because that one obviously is such a bigger deal. Mm-hmm. He wipes out all of New York City, right? Is that what the story is?
All of Manhattan.
All of Manhattan's dead.
And then some other. Doesn't it hit some other cities in the world too?
I think so.
Yeah.
But I don't think so. I think man will
eventually revert back
more.
To...
Maybe it'll be good for a little bit, but people's interests are going to get into their mind again.
I had to check up. I think Doomsday Clock picks up on that same concept.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so excited to read Doomsday Clock.
Yeah.
And that's out right now? It's like coming out as we're talking?
I want to say that they're on issue 8 or 9.
Okay.
And it's a bi-monthly book. So we'll probably have to recap it and finish it up.
Yeah.
Once it's all out.
I'll have to go to my local comic book store.
I have both variant covers, so then do a whole set.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Dude. Okay. We're pulling the curtain back a little bit. Sweet. Cool.
But it's interesting. I guess it's a question for a later podcast.
What do you think, though? Do you think Ozymandias was right, or what's your opinion on this?
In a way, I think in the world that they live in, and excluding John from the fact, like knowing that they lost John, the one thing that could probably save humanity from anything.
Yeah.
And on how high of a brink of nuclear war they were at.
Yeah.
The only way to stop them from just killing themselves was just to mess them all up, to give them that mourning period, to kind of reset that doomsday clock a little bit, like not forever, but it's resetting it temporarily.
Well, yeah, when you look at it from that perspective, then Ozymandias probably was right.
Yeah. Because they were ready to just launch nukes. Yeah. We haven't...
The other option would have been death.
Yeah, exactly. So I think at any point that option is right. Would it work in this reality? Interesting question.
I don't know. Well, you got to think too about the poem. Is it by Shelley? I need to look at it. The poem that Ozymandias, the character, is based on.
Oh yeah,
it's Ozymandias. Oops, I'm saying it all wrong. We looked at we boasted about having the right pronunciation, and we're saying it wrong the whole time. But the poem is about this statue that is the symbolism of a great kingdom, and that over years and years, Percy Bysshe Shelley. Let me get my poem reading voice. I'm going to get a little bit closer to the mic. Everyone get ready. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.
Oof.
Whew. So he's a man obsessed with his legacy.
Yeah.
And it's all gone because eventually... Time just occurs. So I stand by my original argument. time would eventually, get rid of whatever that he built, and whatever had to be sacrificed to make that. I don't know. What a nerd, Alan Moore.
Yeah, I know.
Alan Moore's just such a nerd, right?
I love it. And then he goes so deep into pharaohs and to Ramses and stuff like that he does so much research for every project. It's insane. It's insane.
I'd love to get an idea on how his writing process happens, because obviously he gets an idea sparked, and then he fleshes that concept out, and I wonder how he chooses. I'm going to bring in this poem. This poem fits. I would love to know more about that. What a kooky individual.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever met Alan Moore?
No. That's one of my hit lists that I have not met. I've met Neil Gaiman. I've met Frank Miller. I've met almost all of my. I met Dave Gibbons. I got to interview Dave Gibbons at New York Comic Con.
And what did Dave Gibbons tell you?
He's just such a cool guy. He's just so nice. He's just a nice British guy. Just talked about Green Lantern for a minute.
Did you ask him anything about Watchmen?
I did, and it was more of me asking him how is it seeing his legacy live on this intensely and this strong in this day and age.
Yeah.
And so much so that they're making movies and new adaptations and prequels and sequels and all this stuff.
And a TV show too now,
Yeah, exactly. And the TV show. And he was just like, it's insane. he even says it's nerdy being around all of his favorite creators. Like he's still a little excited geek, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I love it. It's so
starstruck,
and he's super humble, and he's super just amazing. He's just an amazing guy, and it made me meeting the artists and writers is one of my favorite things, because then I go back and I read their work and I see how much passion they had put into the work, because I got to speak to them for a minute.
Yeah.
It makes me appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah, you understand another layer of them.
Yeah, exactly. That's really cool. And it's knowing how he fleshed out the characters and how he created Rorschach and what he did to make him a little different than anything else. Mm-hmm. And those are his original creations, his original characters. How cool it must be to see it live on for whatever 20, 30 plus years. You know what I mean? Like, this is now the most critically acclaimed graphic novel still to this day. You can't go to a Barnes & Noble or a bookstore without finding a copy of Watchmen.
Which is funny that you mentioned that, because I had my copy that I bought in college, and when we were preparing for this episode reading it, I couldn't find it.
Oh, really?
And I think I loaned it to someone and it never came back.
Dude, that's happened to me.
Yeah.
Like, 2 or 3 times to my Watchmen books.
I was like, well,
but I always buy another copy.
Well, yeah. So I went to Barnes and Noble, and then I was like, well, it's $20, and it's $20 well spent. Like, yeah, I'll read this thing.
It's worth reading, worth rereading, and rereading. Like, one of the. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to top this book with anything else.
I think so, man. Then maybe we messed up.
Yeah, honestly.
We'll find out, right? This thing's super essential. Well, man, do you want to close the book on Watchmen?
Do we just volume 1 of probably the Bible of comic books?
Yeah.
Besides, I mean, I guess no. I was gonna say the Dark Knight Returns, but that's like the Bat Bible.
Okay.
Yeah, I could say that.
What is the template of comic book?
Watchmen.
Yeah.
Watchmen.
I guess it's
You score all you get. You have your superhero team. You have your different characters and figures. You have the unknown villain. You have, and I mean, you even have essence of the Joker kind of in there with the comedian and whatnot. Like every hero has that villainous side of them. You could compare
madness and chaos. Yeah, that's cool.
And it's so grounded that it does. As much as I love to leave this reality, it is kind of interesting to see this dystopian reality. What else can we say about it?
I don't know.
Without diving too deep into the movie, which is where we keep on leaning towards.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Everyone should watch probably the director's cut of the movie. I want to say,
so.
Yeah, I want to say so. And if you have access to the Watchmen video game, The End Is Nigh, try playing that. If you have any Watchmen questions, Watchmen references, or anything that we missed or messed up, please let us know in the comments.
Correct us.
Check us out on iTunes. Check us out on YouTube. Apollo City Comics. Check out David Frankenbeans, which is part of our main hoster.
We're here.
And we'll see you next time. Watch Watchmen. And actually, start reading before Watchmen and Doomsday Clock.
Really start reading before Watchmen. It's going to be a long...
They're releasing an omnibus pretty soon of Before Watchmen.
It's going to be a chore is all I'm saying. After reading the joy that is Watchmen, it's going to be a chore.
I'm curious.
All right.
Because I haven't read it.
All right. Well,
I'll find out.
You'll find out.
I know Darwin Cook does some of the artwork, and he's one of my most beloved comic book artists. I know Brian Azzarello did a lot of the storytelling, which I'm not a fan of. But
I've heard you talk about this before.
But I mean, we'll see.
And I think each book has its own artist too. But we'll talk more.
Yeah,
we'll compare. And
I want to say there's Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
All
the
Rorschach,
main characters.
Minutemen, Silk Spectre,
Night Owl.
Yeah,
Ozymandias.
Yeah, start reading that now, guys.
There's Dollar Bill Man. There's a one shot.
Yeah.
And there's a Moloch 2-parter.
Oh wow. Well, that one airs in a month. So
that one airs in a month. So I'm gonna start reading tonight.
Yeah, start reading that now. Catch up. But finish reading the graphic and then compare it to the movie, and we're gonna talk about the movie next time. This is Apollo City Comics. I'm Brandon.
I'm David.
And we'll see you next time.